How does the Eucharist tell the story of the world? The Divine Liturgy is the crown of our Christian life. It is the fulfillment of God's work through Jesus Christ and in the Church. In order to understand this, you must understand the way that God wired the world. God made the world in such a way that its mode of life would be determined and molded through human beings. Thus, having created the raw material of the world in Genesis 1:1, God spends 6 days forming and filling it before coming to rest in it on the Sabbath. Exodus 20 tells us that this is a pattern for human work. That is, human beings, as the image of God, work in the same sense that God works. They are the ones who continue to shape and fill the creation. As the image of God, man is in a sense God's junior partner in the creative development of the world. This is why the fall of the first man and woman did not just mean that they were deprived of life and blessing. Rather, the entire creation suffered because of what they had done. We can see this in the thorns and thistles that began to sprout up after the fall. We can see it in the way that the ground cries out to God against Cain's shedding of his brother's blood. Just as life flows from head and heart to the whole body, so also does life flow from man to the whole body of the world. Man is the image of God, and crown of the world is the enduring link between God and the world. It is through man that God brings the world to its final purpose. But because of the fall, man was steering the world in the wrong direction, to destruction. Jesus Christ steps into the world as the incarnation of God. At the same time, he is God fulfilling God's purpose and man fulfilling man's purpose. When Jesus participates in every aspect of human life, he repairs every aspect of human life and redirects it toward the Father, thereby healing it. And since the man whose life he heals is the head of the world, Jesus is thereby healing the whole world. Thus, when he was raised from the dead, he was raised on the first day of the week. As a week is 7 days, we can see the first day of the week simultaneously as the 8th day of the old week and the first day of the new week. When Jesus came into the world, he carried into himself the whole history of the old world. His genealogy, his body, is carried back to Adam. He carries in his bones and blood the concrete history of the people of Israel and their relationship to the wider world. At the culmination of his life, Jesus took bread and wine and offered them to God, declaring them his body and blood. The matter of our body expresses simultaneously our unity with the rest of the human race and our unity with the whole world. The matter which makes up our bodies is literally constituted out of the food that we eat. Dirt is transformed into grain plants, which are transformed by human intention and labor with fire into bread. Dirt is transformed into the grapevine, which is transformed by human intention and labor with air into mature wine. And when we take those things into our body, we take the world into ourselves. And the grain plants and grapevines themselves have a history, a genealogical history going back to the beginning of the world with the creation of the first plants of their kind. When Jesus, God united with a human body and soul, takes these elements into his body, he is taking the whole world into his body. When he takes these things into his body and goes to the cross, he takes the whole world to the cross. When he is raised from the dead, the whole world is raised with him. And when he says about this bread and wine, to do this as my memorial, he makes us, as members of that same body, participants in this work. This is why we worship and tithe the fruit of our labors to God in the Eucharist. By joining our work with God's work in Jesus Christ, putting it into his body, we transfigure the finite, limited value of the world into the infinite, unlimited value of Christ. We do it on the first day of the week because this act gives birth to new life every week. And we do it on the 8th day of the week because this act carries into it all of the work from the preceding week. In the Eucharist, God makes the world his body. And as he willed from the beginning of creation, he does so through us, the image of God, in the Church.